In this video, I'll show you how to solve the ALEKS problem called using the law of multiple proportions. This is kind of a tricky problem. It's telling us that we have a pure substance X, which contains two elements. It's just calling them E1 and E2, and it's going to give us the masses of those two individual elements. Then it's telling us about three more substances that also contain the same elements, E1 and E2, although different quantities of them. And it wants us to determine if these substances are also pure substances. So to do this, we're going to be using the law of multiple proportions, and I'm going to describe the law of multiple proportions in a really abbreviated, quick, and easy to use way. So to solve this problem, the first thing that you have to do, the number one thing you have to do, is calculate the ratio of element 1 to element 2, the mass ratio that is given to us in the problem. We know that this is a ratio for a pure substance containing E1 and E2. So in a pure substance, one example of a pure substance, we can have 5.13 grams of E1 and 5.87 grams of E2. And we're just going to figure out what that ratio is. I need to get a calculator for that. And the calculator gives me 5.13 divided by 5.87 gives me a ratio of 0.874. So again, what I did here was calculate the ratio by mass of the two elements in this pure substance. Any pure substance that contains elements E1 and E2 will have the same ratio of E1 to E2, 0.847, or it will have a multiple of that ratio. So it might be that number times 2, or it might be that number times 3, or it might be that number times 4. Okay, so in order for us to have a pure substance containing E1 and E2, we've got to have this ratio of E1 to E2 or some multiple of that. So now that we know our magic number is 0.874, I'm going to make a note of that over here. And I'm also going to make sure we remember it's E1 divided by E2, and that is 0.874. That's that magic ratio that makes it pure. We're going to calculate the ratio of E1 and E2 for these other substances. Substance A, the ratio of E1 to E2 for substance A is going to be 17.1 grams divided by 4.89. Let's do the math on that. 17.1 divided by 4.89 gives me 3.50. Now 3.50 is not exactly 0.874, but remember that doesn't mean that it's not pure. In order to be pure, it needs to be this number or a multiple of this number. So 0.874 times 2, what is that? 1.748. That's not what we've got. 0.874 times 3, that is 2.66. Again, that's not quite right. 0.874 times 4, 3.496, which is absolutely going to round to 3.50. That makes this a pure substance. And again, it's a pure substance because that magic ratio, 0.874 times 4, gives us the ratio that we have for this particular substance, 3.5. Let's try again with our next one. 15.5 grams of E1 divided by E2, which is 20.5. 15.5 divided by 20.5 is a ratio of 0.756. And that is not the same as 0.874. And no matter what I multiply by 0.874, I'm not going to get this number here. This is not going to work out. So because this 0.874 is not 0.75, and also because any number that I multiply by 0.874 is just going to make this get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm never going to get 0.76, this is not a pure substance. It is a mixture, an impure substance. Let's try the last one down here. 20.3 divided by E2, which is 7.72, 20.3 divided by 7.72 gives me 2.63. So again, not a perfect match for 8.74, but any multiple of 8.74, if it works out to be 2.63, then that means we have a pure substance. Now I'm going to show you something a little bit faster than what I did with the first example. Remember, with the first example, I was just guessing and checking. I just started multiplying 0.874 by all kinds of different numbers until I found one that worked. If you want to do it a little bit faster, then you can take this ratio that you've gotten, I've gotten the 2.63, and you can divide it by the magic ratio of 0.874, and we'll see what we get. 2.63 divided by 0.874 is exactly 3. So in this process, when you're doing the division, if you get a perfect number out here, that's just a really fast way of determining that 0.874 times 3 is going to give me this 2.63 number. Because I can multiply 0.874 by a perfect 3 and get this result, I know that that means I have a pure substance. Now, I can't imagine a scenario where can't decide is going to be a reasonable answer to this problem. I'm not going to tell you that it's never the answer, but I can't visualize a situation where it would be. So think really carefully before you hit that box.